Okay, and now we are going for our next speaker, Jouni Jussila from Finland, from the company DIZED. And he will tell us about digital revolution in tabletop games. The digital revolution, poor board games, or maybe not. Okay, Jouni, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Just a quick sound check. Everybody can hear me fine? Great. Look at my big face right there and right here. Hello, everybody. Let me just get myself set up here. Just to make sure, do you have my presentation available? All right. Oh, so that's the first slide, is it? Oh, fantastic. All right, so if I go and do that, nothing happens. Here we go. Digital revolution in tabletop games. Fantastic. Before we dive in, let me just very quickly say who I am. I'm Jouni from a company called DIZED, and we work in the digital side of board gaming, so probably why I was invited here. And as you can see from that image, we're big fans of... Oh, like this? All right. I'll start over. My name is Jouni. I'm from a company called DIZED, and we work on the digital side of board gaming, which is probably why I'm here today, talking about these. Now, a few notes that I want to go through before we dive into things. Whoops, there's a bit of a delay. So when I say board games, I mean all tabletop games. I mean board games, card games, collectible card games, miniature games, role-playing games, all the games that you get together with people at a table to play. And also, I'm going to go through a lot of digital stuff that has happened in the board game industry, but this is by no means the definitive list. There's a lot of stuff happening, and I'm just raising some like what I consider to be key things here, and also like this is just one person's or company's view to the matter, and obviously there's a lot of other views to this as well. But let's see what's been actually happening in the industry. And I'm gonna go through this presentation roughly in these 15-minute segments. So first we're gonna look at the past. A lot has happened in digitalization and in board gaming in the past. And then we're gonna move into talk about, well, what's currently happening with the digital stuff and the board game space. And then also, let's look at the future. Let's make a couple of predictions what will happen in the future of board gaming. And then we have 15 minutes for discussion and questions at the end. All right, so digital has a long history in board gaming. As long as there's been ability to implement anything digital with board games, this has been done. You can find board games in the 70s when the board game designers wanted to implement digital features and phenomena into board games. And it's this, board game is definitely a passion hobby and passion industry. When you design games, you put your passion into it. And if you also happen to know about electronics and digital stuff, then that naturally becomes something, oh, I wonder actually if I could implement something into this game and make it more alive or just do something that no one else has done before. So in a sense, like implementing digital with board game is not a new phenomenon, but it's just that we'll go through how it has made a huge difference in the past. We consider a more modern era of board gaming. Sorry, I'm trying to change the slide with my laptop here, which I realize doesn't work. We kind of consider the modern era for board gaming to start somewhere in the 19s. Magic the Gathering was published in the 19s. Settlers of Catan, currently known just as Catan, as Jouni said, make your game simpler. So Settlers of Catan eventually became Catan. That's kind of where we can see this starting. There's more design put into board games, and games are becoming less luck-based, and there's a lot more strategy, and the whole sort of the modern board game what we know as today, which is not games like Monopoly that were made in 1930s or the Game of Life that was made over 100 years ago. But we're talking about the modern board games, which are mainly the games that you would find in stores nowadays, especially if you go to hobby stores. Majority of those games would have been published in the past 20, 30 years. So one of the first digital phenomena, a big phenomena that's still going on today, is Board Game Geek. This site was launched in January 2000 in the Y2K wave, And this is still the biggest online site for board gaming. It's definitely more focused on the, let's say, hobby player or the hardcore player, but this is the biggest online database. If you know Internet Movie Database, this is Board Game Geek, but for board games. It lists over 100,000 published board games, all the publishers and designers, and obviously has an audience of millions of people using this site. So this is definitely one of the first big things that happened in the digitalization side of board gaming. And obviously with Board Game Geek, social media followed soon after. And this has allowed a lot easier sharing of information. People are learning more about the games, they can share about their gaming experiences, and this is one wave of digitalization that has really helped the board game industry. People are a lot more exposed to board games, and they have easier time discussing board games. And there's a lot of services online. I'm just highlighting one here. Magic the Gathering, for example, is a collectible card game where cards have value, and there's a whole international, basically, stock exchange just for Magic the Gathering cards. You can seek out what is the value of this card today. Should I sell it today? Should I hold on to it? Maybe it goes up in value. So all of this is possible because of digitalization. We can have a global market for just one game's cards that people can trade. Let me see what's. Before I change the slide, I would just want to make sure what I will be showing you so I don't surprise myself here. Sorry about that. So getting back a little bit to social media, one big influencer has been YouTube. I'm trying to, do I need to point something with this, or where's the computer that controls this? Okay. Okay, I'll try to shoot at you then. One of the big things is YouTube. People can actually see board games being played, and this is becoming more and more popular in the board game space. There's online streams where you can watch people play games. There's shows like Tabletop where the celebrity Will Wheaton is playing board games with his celebrity friends. There's Critical Role is one of the streams that do online board gaming. There's a lot of how to play videos for board games. If rulebook is not your thing, you can open up YouTube and watch a video when somebody goes through the game, essentially having sort of a friend at the table explaining you how to play the game, which is typically how most people would prefer playing games. There's somebody already there who knows the game inside out and will teach you how to play. So YouTube is one vessel how you kind of can get that experience. So it has definitely been a big influence for board games. And YouTube is the biggest, but obviously we have Twitch and all the other platforms now where the same thing is happening. And Tabletop, for example, is definitely one show that I want to mention because it's basically just a celebration of board games. It's a game where it's a show where people are having fun with tabletop games, and a show like this has influenced a lot of people getting into board games, just seeing other people having fun with board games, and they kind of think that, hey, I think I'm gonna get back to board gaming. This looks awesome. And I say getting back to board gaming because who hasn't played a board game? Like pretty much everybody in the, at least let's say Western world, but I would say even globally, has played a board game, and especially as a kid you play these games. And it's something that you maybe forget, or it's not, when you're growing up, it might, if it's not actively part of your life, you think that board gaming is a thing only kids do. And then being exposed to, hey, I can be an adult and I can have fun with board games. This is one of the things that the show has done, making it okay to actually going out there and buying a board game and playing it with your friends. I'll talk a bit about more about like board games in media, but YouTube definitely has been a big influencer in this. And another thing that has definitely rode on the wave of digitalization are board game events. I'm sorry for this smudgy image. Let's just say that to protect these people's privacy, you can't recognize them. Events have grown immensely when digitalization has started to happen, and with people being able to find out about these events and events are able to advertise online. Gen Con, Spiel in Germany have grown a lot in the past 15, 20 years. And people are just traveling to these shows from further away. Gen Con, which started as the Lake Geneva convention, where the name comes from, originally, has now grown to be a huge show that fills the exhibition center downtown Indianapolis. And now they've also needed to expand to the Lucas Oil Stadium, and it's grown. It's I think the attendance, the turnstile is about 200,000 people annually, obviously pre-COVID. And Spiel, the same thing, a huge show with 1,000 board game industry operators showing their latest products and what they're doing there. So events, obviously by themselves is not a digital thing, but these events, if the digitalization wouldn't have been happening and the easier sharing of information and finding out about these shows wouldn't be happening at this level. Now people can have their online schedules, as with all the events, you can schedule, okay, I'm gonna go to that, then I wanna go check out that new game is gonna be out by that hour, that's where I need to be. This photo, for example, is from Gen Con, I believe 2018 or 19, and this is the first morning before the doors open, and publishers are at the show. Obviously they have limited booth space, they're selling their new hot title, but they only have a limited amount of copies, so all these people are there because they want to get those copies. Let's say they have 500 copies, so you need to be the first at the booth to get those copies. So there's a lot of passion, and not only in the industry but also on the playing side of things, as you can see from a photo like this. And then one thing we definitely need to cover when we're talking about the digital side of board gaming, that has happened in the past 10 years, is crowdfunding. This is one of the major digital phenomena that's been going on. We're all familiar with crowdfunding, but tabletop games absolutely dominate crowdfunding today. 1/3 of all the money that Kickstarter raises is just tabletop games. Tabletop games raised $230 million on the platform last year, where Kickstarter raised, I think it was about, was it 600 million altogether? So 230,000 out of that is just board games. And the biggest campaign last year was Frosthaven, which is the sequel to In the World of Gloomhaven, which is the #1 ranked game on Board Game Geek. So Frosthaven is a continuation of that. And the original Gloomhaven campaign did just $400,000. And then they did a second print run Kickstarter that was was it 3 million or so? And now their next campaign, Frosthaven, was almost $13 million US already. And annually, there's over 2,000 new board games being successfully funded on Kickstarter. I might be wrong about this, but I do believe that it's one of the highest, it's one of the categories where the success rate is really high. And just because it's happening so widely in the board game industry, and because of digitalization, people have easy time sharing information when you're running a Kickstarter for a game like Iron Forest. You can go online, you can talk to people who have run Kickstarters, people are mentoring you, you can find guides. There's a lot of ample amount of information. What do you need to do before your campaign, what do you need to do during your campaign, what happens after the campaign. Everything is readily available for you, and you can literally talk to thousands of people who have done these campaigns and find information about this. So crowdfunding is definitely something we want to mention on this. And probably the reason is because board games, it's a brilliant fit for a crowdfunding campaign. You need money to do the print run and actually get it shipped from the factory for those players. So when you go into your crowdfunding campaign, you can have a readily designed game. You can already give people the game art. You can already show them the rulebook. You can say that it's all here. I only need money to print this game. So it becomes somewhat risk-free. A campaign to run. Yes, back in when the platform started, an idea, hey, I have an idea for a game, that was kind of enough, but now with the development and campaigns becoming more competitive, you do need to have a really solid product when you go into that campaign already, and an audience. Previously, you could just put a campaign online and hope for the best. Now, if you're not bringing your own audience that, hey, the campaign launched now, go back it now, you're going to have a harder time getting a successful campaign. So it's evolving all the time. It's not the same that it was 10 years ago, but it's still a major phenomena. We even now have crowdfunding platforms that have been started by the board game industry and are just solely for board games. For example, GameFound, that was founded by Awakened Realms. And Simon, Cool Mini or Not, had their own pledge manager platform, which is after the campaign, when campaign organizers need to kind of figure out thousands of people who's getting what. They ordered different things from our campaign, so pledge manager is for that, and Simon was publishing one for the board game industry, although I'm not sure if they're still doing it. But the board game industry is developing these tools internally already, which is not something that board game industry has really done. I agree with Janis when Janis said that board games are becoming the behind this wave of digitalization. There are other, like video game industry, for example, is pushing AR and XR and everything in a lot bigger passion and working on the frontier of things, rather than where board game industry is still playing catch up a bit more with this. But I think this might be like one small area where board game industry is kind of in the forefront of things, the crowdfunding aspect and building crowdfunding campaigns. I don't think there's any other industry in the world that I'm pretty confident saying would know so much about crowdfunding products as the board game industry, just because we have thousands of successful campaigns every year and raising a ridiculous amount of money. So just naturally that develops. All right, I think we spent enough time on highlighting the crowdfunding stuff. Next, I'm gonna mention smart devices. These have been around. When did the first iPhone come out? 2008-ish, something? 6, 7. So we've had smart devices. I consider that to be let's say the sort of start for the smart device era. So let's say for the past 10 years we've had smart devices in a sense that they have actually had made sense to use along with the board game. But this has been used a lot in the well, let me correct myself there. This has been used a little bit in our industry. Some games have, for example, companion apps that somehow enhance your gameplay with that game. Or there's even a few games where you must have a smart device because the app is the game master. You cannot play this game without it. Mansions of Madness, the second edition of the game, or the Unlock game series, or Chronicles of Crime. There is nothing that comes with the game that would allow you to play that game without having that actual app with the game. So these have been implemented. But I originally said a lot, but yeah, there's a handful of games that implement the app technology or smart devices with your game. And they can be anything from score calculators and soundtracks and simpler things like that to the game masters, AI players. Not sure if there's please note if you know a game that has an AI player that you can use with the smart device. Someone's nodding. So I guess there's I can't think of one on the top of my head. But if it's not out there, it will be very soon. So let's say you have this is a game that you need to have 4 players for, and must have 4 players for, and let's say you have 3 at the table. You could whip up your smart device and have the smart device play the 4th player. So definitely something that we can see that is on the race in the board, has been on the race and is now still in the race in the board game industry. And with that, we can move also to talk about the digital adaptations of board games. Asmodee Digital, for example, is one company that does video game versions of board games. You can download them for mobile devices, as you can kind of see listed there. You can find board game versions on Steam. For example, Scythe is a super popular board game. So popular, in fact, that they made a specific Steam edition video game version of it. Blood Rage is another game that has a video game version of it. And also we have lots of platforms online, Tabletop Simulator, Tabletopia, as we can see here. board game arena, where you can just open up a browser page and you can play a board game online as a video game version with your friends. And obviously these platforms were hugely popular last year when people still wanted to play board games but couldn't really get together with other people to play them. So they were able to at least play these games online. And a lot of these platforms went through a big growth burst during last year and during the pandemic. Then another digital wave that's definitely happening is, I'm just gonna put one example here of a game. Digital tools allow us to do a lot more in the design space of board gaming. For example, art is a lot easier to produce and share and get opinions on and improve on when you have the digital tools available. And I'm using this one map for the game called Agemonia, done by friends of mine. It's now a Kickstarter, please go check it out. Awesome game, I've played it. So artists being able to do this fantastic art for the board games, and this is one definitely aspect of board games, the art, and you have the physical art. For board gamers, these are the paintings that you put on your shelf and admire. So digital tools have allowed the art to be improved, and the art in board games today and what it was 30 years ago is definitely improved. But digital tools allow you to do a lot of other things. For example, personally, when I'm designing a game, I love spreadsheets, and I use spreadsheets all the time to balance my games. I want to make sure that, okay, I want my game to be balanced. I want to know that everybody has an equal opportunity at the table, so that the game is balanced and there's not, the kingmaker or whatever, like you draw this one card and that's the end of the game, you won the game. So these tools definitely allow us to balance these games, and also we can use print and play copies. We can send files to our friends. Hey, please print out the game. This is the new version of it. I fixed some things. Fill my online form for the feedback, and I can go back to tweaking the game, or maybe we can take an online call. So now you're no longer limited to doing playtests with your friends and family. And this is still what happens a lot. And there are a lot of games that are published where you kind of say, and I know this because we published such a game, that we playtested with friends and family. Oh, everybody loved it. We published it, and it's like, I thought it was going to be bigger. And now what we, in retrospect, have realized, we should have taken up on the opportunity to send the game to different markets and to different kinds of players. Please print and play the game copy, and give us feedback on it, and develop it further and really polish the diamond before publishing it. So those tools definitely would have been available for us today, but not so much, say, 20 years ago even. I think this is a bit about the playtesting as well. Digital print has made prototyping of games a lot easier. Not a board game related image there, but it gives you the idea. It's very easy to produce a professional looking prototype of your game. This is especially important when what Janis, for example, said in the previous presentation about showing your game for the publisher. If you meet them at an expo, they're talking to, say, 50 designers at that show, and they're looking at their prototypes. If you're bringing something that looks like a product that they could sell, you're already in a lot stronger position than somebody who's maybe, I don't think anybody like hand draws stuff anymore and presents stuff. Maybe the Mike Elliott's and the big guys can do it, but mainly it's you do some sort of digital version of your game. Maybe you print it yourself, or maybe you even use digital print to get those few game copies that you need for it. But definitely has been a big improvement in the playtesting and showing your game, and is very important for the manufacturing process as well. You can manufacturing process today is there's multiple rounds of checks before your game is printed. And first of all, they just print a white copy version of your game. You get your board game without any art. They just manufactured the bits and pieces, and you can try out that the game, the pieces work. And then you get a digital print copy, which has full game with graphics, but not done with the mass print machines, but with the digital print. And you get a game that feels like the actual printed game, even though you only produce, say, 10. And this allows you to check the game before you print 3,000 copies and realize something went horribly wrong with your graphics and your game is broken. And as again, Jani said in the previous presentation, it's very difficult to patch 3,000 printed game boards that have been shipped all around the world. So you kind of want to get it right on the first go. So those digital prints definitely help with that, but also a great way to send them out for reviewers. Even before your game comes out, reviewers can use your digital print copies, play just the game, and do their reviews and tell the audience about that. And for example, that's one thing that's been done with Agemonia. The game is on Kickstarter. The game is not a real thing yet, but they do need people to talk about this. So being able to do digital print and sending those out for the reviewers is super important. Then one kind of interesting thing that we have seen a little bit is NFC technology, which is not yet implemented really in the board game industry, but this is also something we've been seeing in the past few years, because board games are becoming so popular that now they're starting to be pirated copies of successful board games. And especially the Catans and Carcassones of the world. I don't know if somebody's pirating Ice Cool. It's a huge title. It won the Game of the Year award, or the Children's Game of the Year award a few years ago. So it's a big game, and when those games are selling a lot, there are people who want to take up on the opportunity. And unfortunately, one downside with the digitalization, it is easier to get access to these assets and print professionally good-looking copies of your game. So one thing that industry has been looked into is using NFC tags to approve the authenticate the games, that players know that they have an actual copy from the publisher and it's not a pirated copy. All right, so we've kind of now spent half an hour. We've talked about the past of board gaming, and now I've pretty much come almost up to date. So we're moving more now to talk about the current state of the industry. You've seen there's a lot of stuff happening, and in a nutshell, we could say that the board game industry, being so big as it is today, the major contributor there has been digitalization. And saying that, I want to show you a picture of, kids, do you know what this is? This is a fax machine. Still widely used in the board game industry. This was 2 years ago, the last game show that we actually attended with a booth before the pandemic. I needed to buy our company one more exhibitor pass. We had one more person at our booth, and they asked me to fax in my credit card details, which was unheard of to me. And I very politely declined, and I was asking, you must have some online form of payment, PayPal or something? And they replied, oh, no problem, just email those details for us. And I still felt very uncomfortable, because I felt it's going to be the same end result. If I email it to them, somebody's going to print it out, and there's going to be a permanent copy lying on some table with my credit card information on it. So I use this as an example to sort of highlight that board game industry is, in many parts, it's still playing catch up with the digital. This is an analog industry, and it has a long, long tradition. I mean, board games have been played from thousands of years ago, and they have a very strong sort of presence in the 19th century as well. So this long tradition also comes with the fact that it's an industry that has built itself onto the era before digitalization. Let's say, for example, Carta Mundi, which is one of the biggest operators, board game manufacturers. I think it's the biggest individual manufacturer with multiple factories across the world, board game manufacturing, and like this is the company who does the casino cards for Las Vegas, and they have to be done very accurately and everything. So a company like this that has been founded in the 60s is still working in a lot of ways that how they built their company. So they are going through this transformation, and they are definitely not in the forefront of things. Maybe with NFC tags or something like that, they might be, But I think, for example, the wine industry is already authenticating wines with NFC tags. So not really in the forefront of that. But in majority, the board game industry is playing catch up with digital. When I go to a video game conference and I see what people are doing with video games and how like how surprised I am always, like, oh, we can do this already, and then at the same time, and funnily enough, at the same conference, this was a GDC, the last time I was there, Catan has a VR version, and this VR version of Catan is where you put VR goggles on, and in the VR space, you sit around a physical table to play a tabletop game at that table. So the adaptation was that this virtual reality where they could just try to bring the physical medium into the virtual medium. And to me, it felt like that there could be a lot more we could do with Catan and virtual world than just doing a table where you can play Catan. So this is kind of what's been happening. So a lot of things are being adapted, but not in the forefront of things apart from, like, say, crowdfunding marketing and running crowdfunding campaigns. But board gaming is definitely going through the same phenomena that video gaming has been for the past 20, 30 years. It's no longer a hobby of the nerds. As in, if you said 20 years ago that I play video games, it had a very different connotation than what it does today. Because who doesn't play at least some Candy Crush or something with their mobile phone? So video games have become a lot more mainstream, and board games are going through the same thing. But in many areas, board games are still considered to be toys for the kids. And this is constantly that we face, for example, when we talk to the industry about what we do in the digital side of board gaming. It's like, board gaming? Do people still play board games? And then the conversation kind of needs to start from there. That, yeah, they do. So you can see that board gaming is a lot more present in media today, movies and TV series. I'm using a movie from the 90s as an example, so not really a modern example, except there was a new version of that movie very recently. But if you watch TV series and if you watch movies, other media, board games are being mentioned more. You watch the morning shows in the States, you can see that there's more board game developers just talking about the new design that they came up with. And the games that you see on these shows, it's no longer Monopoly and Risk and things that REM was singing about 30 years ago. You're seeing references to Ticket to Ride and to Catan and Dungeons of Dragons, and a lot of celebrities, for example, are now proudly playing Dungeons of Dragons. What's the... no, I'm drawing a blank here. So it's becoming more mainstream. It's becoming more common to play board games. It's no longer so much of a weird thing, obscure thing, or a thing that only kids would do. But you can still see that, for example, board games, when we look at the global market, the board games are measured under toy industry. Toy industry is about $100 billion industry annually, and games and puzzles are over 10 million of that, 10 billion of that. So it's still a category under the toy game industry. So we're not quite where video games are already with the general, let's say, acceptance, if you can use that word. Here's a recent article from 2 days ago. Asmodee is the biggest industry operator in the hobby game space of board gaming. And they've been sold twice in the past, I think, 6 years. First, there was a French fund that bought them, I think, 2015, and then another fund bought them a few years ago, and now they're looking to sell again, and with a lot higher price. So this is one thing where we can see that things are really happening in the board game space. And to be mentioned, Asmodee, as I showed earlier, also has a digital department that fully focuses on doing digital versions of these board games. So what we can see with the digital wave that's been happening in the board games, the board game industry has been growing with this digital wave, and it will keep growing for the foreseeable future. And a big part of that will be as it has been, the digitalization with all the things that we just went through that's been happening in the board game space. We don't see any of those really stopping. Everything will just keep on being done, and publishers are being more and more successful, utilizing all the aspects of the things that digitalization actually allows us to do in board game space. Of course, the future is unpredictable, of course. But what we can tell from right now, it looks like that we're headed in pretty good direction. Let's look at a few things that I think will be the thing of the future. One of the things that we think that will play a major role is actually on the experience side of things. And digitalization can help a lot with that in the board game design. For example, there's a company called Tilt5 that does AR version of board games. You still need to use those very cool looking goggles and have what looks to be a cigarette lighter, but that's the remote control, how you control your game. But essentially you don't have a real physical game there. You have AR goggles on and the game on the table becomes alive. And this is a good example of, is this a tabletop game or is this a video game? And this is what we can see, what we've already seen happening in the video game industry as well. Games are becoming more immersed with movies and TV series, and these IPs are just like all over, and even the products, you're kind of like having a hard time telling, not really sure if this is a video game that has a lot of movie-like elements, or if it's kind of like a movie, but where it has some interactive elements, so I can kind of play, let's say Bandersnatch on Netflix, for example, where you can choose where the movie goes, but sort of you're playing it because you get to choose and see what happens with your... So it's kind of like happening with this, with board games and solutions like this as well. And I'm gonna follow Janis's example here with the selfless promotion. Our company, DIZED, is also doing this very same thing. We're focused on the rulebook issue. And when Janis said that board games are difficult to be patched, that's one issue we want to solve. We want to make DLC, downloadable content, and patching available for board games. We want rulebooks to become fully digital so that when publisher prints the game, they can ship it with digital instructions that they can update, and they can have FAQs and everything in it. And one thing where we want to make board games more immersive is interactive tutorials. Not the rule book or video where you have to absorb all the information up front and then you need to learn the game by trying to implement this mountain of information that's most likely everything is not going to be in your head, and you're going to go back to the rule book all the time, and this really hinders the playing experience. And this was the same thing with video games 20, 30 years ago when video games came with manuals. And then video games kind of realized, you know what, we can actually build this into the game. So there's a tutorial in the game that teaches you everything you need to know by playing the game. And this is what we want to do for board games, interactive tutorials that work essentially like the friend at the table, who can follow what's going on, knows not to teach you rules you don't need yet, and really get into the action immediately, and learn the game while you go. So we're focused on this, let's say, companion side of things, making games more accessible, but making them more immersive with music and the animations and the theme of the world, and really making the experience better. And also then the DLC that allows you to upgrade your game with the AI players, with the game masters, with the score calculators, whatever you kind of can use to enhance your gaming experience with. That's kind of what we want to be focused on. And a big part I do want to mention here in the end is that we still want the focus to be on the moment around the table. People play tabletop games because it's a great way to spend time together. It gives us a reason to get together, and it's always fun when you do something with your friends. Maybe you cook together, maybe you play a board game, whatever it is, but having that common action is great. Board games come with other benefits as well. It teaches us social skills. There's a lot of cognitive stuff that you learn with board games. Children learn to count, recognize symbols, items. There's just vast or a good amount studies that board games help with Alzheimer's disease, and it's really good for your brain. Well done, Brain Games, with your company name, by the way. So board games have always been around, and we don't see them going anywhere. Because we don't see the need for people to gather to go away. And board game is a brilliant medium to do that with. So that's definitely where we want to keep our focus with the actual game, but with our device. This is the DIZED that you can see on the slide on the table. With our device, we just want to make that experience better. And that's sort of in a nutshell where I think the future of board gaming will be. It's in the experience. And the way how we can enhance this is combining like all the things that I just went through during this presentation. It's being able to make better games, better looking games, games that are better balanced. Games are better today than what they have been ever before. And the best games are yet to be made. And so games are improving, but also we can improve the overall gaming experience by making board games, for example, with digital, just bring sound to board games, which is vastly, board games don't really, like, how does a game sound like, apart from die rolling on the table? We can bring the music and what video games have, like, as a standard. Like, of course, you don't do a game without having ambient sounds or music in it. Board games, this is not a thing in board games. This is like when we started doing the tutorials for board games, we wanted to have music with it, and that's the first question. But wait, music for board games, what is that? Like there's a lot of things we kind of have to research and study and figure out that how do you actually do this, because this side has been missing from board games until now. So to summarize this, the industry has been able to grow with the wave of digitalization, as many things in the world. But I think board game industry has benefited from this maybe more than average compared to other industries. And it's because digitalization has allowed the industry to improve the product, improve the global distribution of that product, improve the information of that product, and making it readily more available, making it more exciting, maybe, through having it just presented on media. So board game industry has benefited a lot of this digital wave, which I call a digital revolution in the tabletop game industry. Without that, board game industry would look very different today. And currently, even though digital has been implemented for a long time, the board game industry is still playing catch up with it. And I don't really see board game industry being in the forefront, in the frontier of developing new things in a big wave. We can be in things like crowdfunding, and then like our companies figuring out how to implement smart devices with physical products. So that's not really, like, I mean, it's being done, but like the interactive tutorial side of things is not yet really big. I think YouTube tutorials is still what you do if you need to open up your smart device and change the battery. But we're working on that area. There might be something with NFC tags or even AR and tabletop gaming that might be done in the board gaming. But yeah, current situation is that it's still kind of behind the first wave of things. But passionate game designers are sure to use these technologies as soon as they are affordably, readily available for them to use in game designs. And this is something that we've seen in the past as well. I think one quick good example final for that would be room escape games. That was a big wave globally that has happened in the past 5 years, and immediately board game industry implemented that, and you have several series of different games of room escape-like games where you play for an hour and you need to solve the game within the time frame. And the future of the industry is continued growth. We believe digital will play a lot bigger role, or keep playing a big role in the future of gaming. And my sort of the nutshell of a thought here is that it's the experience that we can see really improving with board games in the future. All right, I think my time is up. I thank you. And I think it's time for questions.
Yeah, any questions?
Hi. So my first question is about hybrid games. I come from Amsterdam, so Holland, and I was wondering if you know more about the situation in other countries. But in Holland, it's been a big issue with people that try to come up with hybrid games because the retailers are seeing problems there because they don't know where to put it. Is it on the shelf with the board games or with the video games? And the other thing that they are saying, well, we are still having stock from the 90s with the DVD games. So the board games where there was all of a sudden a DVD inside the box, but actually it was only hiring the price and not much giving back to the consumer actually. So yeah, they still try to sell that stock, so they are kind of hesitant to get hybrid games on the market. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's not many hybrid games. Besides the fact that it's pretty hard to come up with a hybrid game, I tried, because actually if it's a hybrid game, the definition of a hybrid game is that it's only doable in the combination. So sometimes it's doable as a game where there's a combination, but then it might also be just a mobile game or just a board game. Yeah. And then it's in essence not a hybrid game. Yeah. But so what do you know about other countries? When do you think hybrid games will be more on the market?
As it happens, I do know something about this area because our entire product, the companion app that's been meant to use with board game, essentially can convert every single board game into a hybrid game. We called them fusion games in the past, but hybrid game. Hybridgames.com is, for example, one of our domains. So are there any other questions, or should I just spend 15 minutes on that? I love this topic.
No, I have 2 more questions.
Okay. So I spent 5 minutes on this then. Hybrid games, as I said, like games like digital has been implemented with games from the 70s. But in the beginning, before we had smart devices or internet, it needed to be something that comes with the game. And that was less of a problem for publishers and retailers. And now we have games that might demand an external thing for you to do in order to even play that game. And let's say for this example that hybrid games are games that do require you to have the smart device. So it's not an added content, but it's actually needed. Like Unlock, like Chronicles of Crime, like Mansions of Madness 2nd edition that I mentioned earlier. There are plenty of other examples here. This is one example where this industry is very traditional. And yeah, we tried this in the 90s. We have games that came with DVDs. Which, by the way, was one of the things that I thought should I mention, that the games became with DVDs until basically YouTube replaced all of that. No need to do an expensive DVD and then put it into your game because YouTube takes care of that. But this is a traditional industry, and we've learned that trying to do a disruptive service like this, that hey, let's implement digital to board gaming, there is definitely we've encountered the same thing you say. Oh, no, people play board games because they want to get away from digital. And whatever other reasons, we don't believe any of that is true, because we believe people play board games because board games are awesome. And you still have you're playing with your Facebook and whatever. Like, you're not going away from digital by playing the board game. So this is a trend that we have seen changing. It doesn't happen very quickly. Retailers, for example, when Chronicles of Crimes and Unlocks started to happen, it was exactly like, we don't know. And then when people kept buying those games, they went, yeah, I guess it's great. And one thing what we, for example, want to do with this, with retailers, is to give them more tools. They're afraid of this. They're afraid that their brick and mortar store business is going to be taken away by the digital. And they are retailers who try to embrace it, and okay, we need to change. What do we do? Do we need to become from a retailer store, for example, more to be like a service? Maybe you implement a board game cafe with your store, or give people another reason to come by. Maybe your business is more at the physical location to sell, coffee and food and just making board games available. and maybe digital purchases that people can do in your location. So we can see this, but we can also see it's changing, and this will change with the audience demand. Retailers can't switch to hybrid games, and then people will start to want them more. I think it's going to happen the other way around. There's going to be more requests from people for this. And this is, for example, how we want to help retailers do this change, is by offering them a tool. I mentioned that we have interactive tutorials. A lot of retailers teach you the whole game at the store. They have demo people who know these games, and they teach you those games at the store. Well, you know how expensive it is to have somebody spend half an hour to sell a $50 game. Like, in that time, you should be selling a car and getting a commission of a car sale. You can't be spending half an hour time introducing and maybe even teaching a game for a customer. So hopefully our app will be a tool that they can use in store. Or you want to understand how the game works? Well, please sit down here. We have an interactive tutorial. Take as long time as you want at the table, but I can now focus on selling more copies, attending the store, meet and greet other customers, and then I'll sell you the copy when you're done with the demo. So, sorry? And it's already being used, for example, right here in Riga. So this is kind of where we want to help the retail industry to kind of understand the value of digital, and where we think that it can really benefit the entire industry, publishers and retailers and players all alike. Hopefully that answers your question. It will happen, but it will take time. Traditional industry with long history doesn't change overnight.
Yep. Yeah, it does answer my question. So the second question I had is, can I ask you your opinion about Asmodee buying Board Game Arena?
Sure, I think it's great. I think it's great that we have successful companies in the board game industry that are being acquired. Now, what the future for that will be, I don't know. But so far, Asmodee has been buying many companies, and from what I understand, they have been great with these companies. They are not like Electronic Arts, where they buy a studio, and then if that studio doesn't work out, they kill it. They buy successful game studios, and they allow these game studios to operate on their own. They are still independent game companies that just work inside this one umbrella. And this is, if this works with BGA, Board Game Arena, which is for anybody watching this, it's an online platform where you can play video game versions of board games. If Asmodee does the same thing, that they allow that team who's passionate about their platform to keep building it to be the platform they always wanted it to be, I don't see an issue with it, but it does inspire the rest of us to we know that, hey, there's opportunity in this industry. We also want to become big and maybe even be bought out by Asmodee or somebody. So I think it's definitely a good thing, and I hope nothing goes sideways with it.
And the last thing, I kind of missed the word metaverse in your presentation. Can you say what you think will happen in the metaverse in terms of board games?
Which is one of the things. When I said in the beginning that I won't go through every single DVDs and metaverse, I have to say that I haven't. I don't have a strong opinion about this. Yeah, not sure if I can elaborate on that too much. I think it's the experience is where board game industry will be focused, and the fusion with other IPs. Like we already, any big IP, Star Wars or what Disney has or Marvel or whatever, it's already, everything is being implemented in the board game space. So I think it's one medium that will be playing a factor there with the others.
Okay, we have one more question.
So I remember during your presentation that you talked a little bit about VR in Catan, and I thought it was interesting that you said you thought it was weird that it was just the board game in VR. But I've been developing card games and a lot of stuff for VR recently, and that is actually one of the strengths of doing VR board games, is that you can tie it to board gamers and say, hi, this is just your game in VR, but you can play it online with your friends. And that's kind of one of the big selling points to a lot of traditionalist board gamers who's like, yeah, I only want to play in physical space.
Yeah.
Because you said you thought it was bad that they did that, can you expand on why you think it was negative?
Well, I should correct myself if I said I don't think it's bad. I thought it was weird when board game is its own medium. And there's certain things in board gaming why board gaming is awesome, which is the tangibility of assets, the physical presence of other people, and all of that. And VR does a lot of things really well. So trying to combine, like putting the medium, I'm going to use another example here. There's a lot of, some of these online platforms, for example, Tabletopias and such, where you play games online. There's a lot of people who don't like that because even though it allows you to essentially play the game, you're losing a lot of the thing why you love the game in the first place. Admiring the art that's physically, you're looking at it with your eyes and being able to touch things, how wood feels, how these plastic things feel. Hey, they have this recycled cool material. I have miniatures. I can touch this sword here and admire these in close detail. All of this is to one extent lost in the digital world. And to me, it felt like they took a brilliant medium and then they tried to present that brilliant medium through another brilliant medium, but too brilliant doesn't mean that it translates really well. So what I think with the Catan VR is that because it's a different medium, the Catan experience, it should be redesigned in a way that it works well on that medium, that it gives you the Catan playing experience, but it's done well for the VR medium. For example, when I played Catan VR, I couldn't tell my bricks from wood because they both looked. That's a resolution issue and obviously something that you could easily fix. But that's like one of the things where I'm thinking. Not being able to tell these two cards apart that are floating in front of me, it was kind of like making me feel like I don't think I would like to play board games in VR. So that's what I meant with my comment.
It's the non-verbal communication that is missing, I think. Right? So what I like about sitting on a table, I'm playing somebody a trick, right? And I want to see. Oh shit, man! The non-verbal communication is missing in VR.
Yeah,
they should
try to play.
Come up with a concept where you maybe with your goggles on know that somebody is looking at you, for instance, and then it makes sure that you are guided to that person.
Yeah, try to play Texas Hold'em with an avatar and try to tell if they're bluffing.
Yeah.
We have time for a short question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm quite surprised that you did not mention online platforms like Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator because... maybe then I left the room at that point.
Have I been boring?
No, because from your comments I see that you love the games that are like the presence of the games, of touching the pieces, and then I thought, okay, these platforms probably are away from this concept, but they still are a big, huge part of future of gaming, probably post-COVID, because people are all about wanting to play games but not being able to come together.
Well, this is a good example of what I said about the different mediums before. If you play board games online as a video game version, let's say Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, Board Game Arena, you're playing a digital version of a physical game. And if you're playing a video game, essentially, there's a lot better video games and a lot more resources put into video games. I'd rather play League of Legends that's actually been designed for this medium I'm using than trying to use these platforms to handle, especially when it's anything more complex, with cards and the meeples and tokens and whatever objects you have in a board game. Let's say Ice Cool, it's a flicking game. I cannot play Ice Cool online because I can't flick the penguin on Tabletopia. Their physics engine don't handle penguins well. So to me, board games will always be important as that physical medium exactly because of that physicality, which at least now, I don't know if we have things in the future, you put gloves on, and then it feels exactly like you're handling this stuff in your VR space or in your video game version of the board game. But right now, we don't have that, and that's really important. I, for example, at my work desk, I have a fidget cube, I have a couple of massage sort of hand-stimulating balls that I can play with, and a few other toys. And I noticed that whenever I'm on an online call with somebody, I have something in my hands that I'm toying with. We're very physical beings, and we yearn for that touch. And I think board games will always need to have that to be board games.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank you.
interesting presentation and for questions. Jouni, small present for you.
Oh, wow.
Also from us, from Latvians.
We support innovation.
Exactly, you are always on the first lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you.